add. Let's see. There you go.
Hey, Joey. How are you?
Doing good. Doing real good. Like the setup you got back there. Very teak-esque.
I try. Yeah.
Let me scoot
Got to
this back a
represent.
little bit. That's right. All right. Well, let me go ahead and introduce this thing. Hello to everyone, all of our audience that's watching out there. This is episode 2 of Teal, Tint. My name is Joey. I am the CEO and founder of Greek Law Incorporated. For those of you who are kind of new to what we do, Greek Law is an organization that was founded back in 2016. Our whole purpose is to travel from universities to high schools to middle schools and educate students on sexual assault awareness and prevention and consent. So, like I said, we've been around for about 4 years now. We've been all over the place. And while we are all quarantined in this corona world we're living in, I thought, hey, you know what? April is still Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So, why don't we, just because we can't go to campuses anymore right now, doesn't mean we can't do something. So here we are with Teal Tint, just kind of a weekly discussion with some of my favorite people about collegiate sexual assault prevention. So that's what we're doing right now. If you want to go on our YouTube page, just look up Greek Law on YouTube. You can see all of our episodes. We're uploading everything to YouTube. So last week's episode with Kate Surik is uploaded there right now, and then by tomorrow this will be up as well. So let me go ahead and introduce my guest this evening to you guys. Way back in the day, I used to be a chapter advisor for my fraternity, Tau Kappa Epsilon Fraternity, at Indiana University Southeast, where I currently work at. And when I was a chapter advisor, my guest tonight, he was actually the president of the fraternity. So me and him, we work side by side. I feel like we could do an entire podcast on silly things that we had to deal with back in the day. And I'll let him tell you a little bit more about himself here in a moment, because he has a lot more accolades than just chapter president. But it's my pleasure to introduce our guest, Mr. Thomas Geary. Thomas, how you been?
Doing well. Thanks for the introduction, Joey. And I want to say hi to Rebecca. I see that she's on here. So your broadcast is going all the way out to Canada, because that's where she is at. So
international.
Yeah, you're now international. So congratulations to you, Joey.
Hello, Rebecca.
But yeah, like you said, I am with Tau Kappa Epsilon Fraternity. I currently serve as a chapter advisor at Indiana University Southeast for my home group. And then I'm a volunteer as well for other TEAC chapters across TEAC Nation, and enjoy really giving back. So I appreciate the fact that you invited me here tonight, and everything that your organization has done to bring attention to this important matter, because it's something that impacts every single Greek organization, whether it's a fraternity or a sorority. And it's something we need to talk about more to make sure that we shed light on the issues at hand. So I appreciate everything you do to be an advocate for those who need voices.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm really lucky to have you here tonight. I feel like I'm getting good guest after good guest. For the people watching, Thomas, you're really, I think you're really what we try to strive to get our fraternity men to be like at your age. So you are definitely, someone that I think undergrads can look up to. I remember whenever I was your age, which feels like forever ago. But now it's like you're kind of that older brother now that, you went through everything not that long ago. So a real good role model and person for undergrads to kind of look up to. So
I appreciate that.
I'm excited to have you here. So yeah, I just got a few questions just to kind of bounce off you and kind of get some conversation started. So here's the first question, and I'm going to kind of go off book here, so get ready. When I started Greek Law, one of the things that kind of stood out to me that was just kind of a head scratcher is, we're smart enough to understand that sexual assault, is not something we should be engaged in. We're smart enough to look and see the results of collegiate sexual assault on both ends. But yet in 2020, we still have fraternities nationwide that are still getting, sexual misconduct reports and still engaging in that type of behavior. In your opinion, why do you think that, continues to happen given everything we know about the results that come from it?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that first in regards to just Greek life and fraternities. Mm-hmm. So whenever we talk about these issues that keep arising and keep popping up and we keep having conversations, it's important to remember that we need to have meaningful conversations with people. When we talk about obstacles, when we address this issue and trying to get more results focused rather than just the conversation piece, it's important that all of our Greek organizations engage in conversations that directly impact the issues on their local campuses. Right. So when we have these issues where we have sexual misconduct that still goes on in Greek organizations and goes on in other campus organizations, such as athletics or whatever else it may be, it's important that we always take a step back and we look and see what the culture is of the organization at hand. So one bad actor isn't the true definition of the organization's opinion or the organization's stance on a certain issue. And regardless of how small your organization is, whenever you get a diverse group of people together, one bad actor can ruin it for everybody. Right. So it's important that we take a look at the culture. It's important that we get meaningful volunteers engaged in with these organizations, especially collegiate students, because those are the people that can make meaningful impacts on lives. They're the ones that can have the serious conversations. They're also the ones that can call BS when it's the conversation goes more to the macho stuff, and make sure that we engage in a dialogue that's both appropriate and also promoting of what the student environment's supposed to be on campuses today. Sure.
Thomas, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to close my bedroom door here. There's a little noise going on in the back, so let me close that up real quick for us.
If it makes you feel better, Joey, I didn't hear any noise on my phone, so I think we're in the clear.
Cool. Blocking out all the distractions. So now, Thomas, you've had an opportunity to work a little bit with, our national office at Teal in various roles. How are you seeing fraternity national offices responding to sexual misconduct on the local level when it comes to different chapters? How are you seeing them connect with the local chapters?
Sure. So my opinion on this is just as a volunteer. I've never worked for any national organization in Greek life. So as a volunteer, specifically working with Tau Kappa Epsilon, they take a very proactive response to that. So there is a team of risk individuals up there at the headquarters building that stands ready to help volunteers, but also collegiates who reach out, which is great. And it's also important that we make sure our national organizations are putting out educational information. So we address these things at the leadership conferences. We address these things as risk management incidences because bad behavior generally spins out and you get more bad behavior. What you condone and what you tolerate is going to be what you get. But it's great to see organizations such as Teak, and I know Teak's not alone, address this head on with mandatory education videos that we do once a year and make sure that we put the topic in the minds of every single collegiate. And then we have that meaningful conversation at the local levels on what we're witnessing and experiencing. And then there's that dialogue and feedback between local universities and the national organizational offices. So it's good to see more proactive, more public conversations about this topic.
Sure. One of the big things that we kind of base Greek law on is education. I'm a firm believer that no matter what the issue, whether it's sexual assault or anything, education and teaching people is just kind of like one of the best weapons that we have to kind of combat any type of negative behavior. And I'm starting to see, some different educational, programs out there. When I was at the University of Louisville, their Pike chapter actually was like the first chapter on campus to actually have a Title IX chair in their fraternity to kind of, help teach Title IX to their members. So in your opinion, how do you think universities are doing a good job at teaching, members about sexual assault prevention?
Well, I think universities have an unusual problem that they're trying to figure out how to overcome. And if we're educating men and women about sexual misconduct starting at the collegiate level, we've missed a big mark because the behaviors that are coming out of middle schools and high schools are the most concerning things. So what's been okay or what's been tolerated at the middle school or high school level is no longer tolerated at the university level. So there's got to be that awakening, especially out of the freshman group, on what is appropriate and what is not, and where do we draw the lines. And you have to be able to educate people from the ground up as freshmen on what those lines are. I think universities try to do the best they can with this topic and this subject, but university officials, especially when you have the deans of students or when you have your FSL advisors, these are the ones that are always in the face of the Greekists anyways. So they may have a great reputation, they may have a poor reputation. It doesn't matter because they're always sending messaging out to the Greek organizations or to the other campus organizations at large. What we need to make sure that we have is bring in outside groups like Greek law to come in and have these conversations so they hear that differing voice and the different opinion, and we get to have those conversations to set what the baseline expectation is going to be. And again, you get what you tolerate is the behavior that you're going to get. We have to make sure that we eliminate any of the bad behavior right from the get-go and identify who those people are. And the universities have to take more of a forefront stance to make sure that we have resources available to the campus organizations to reach out to, or we reach out and we build up nonprofits like what you've created to really support the holistic environmental setting that universities need for our freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors.
Yeah, absolutely. One area that I kind of see a university that is starting to really do some good work is U of L. In the time that Greek law has been together, I've seen them, U of L kind of grow from really not doing that much to now Greeks are having some ownership.
Yep.
They have a fellow out there named Lamont who works in their peace department, and I mean that guy is a dynamo. He is every day it's like he has a different event, for whether it's dating violence, toxic masculinity. I know they're doing like a broga, thing while people are kind of at home. So they're really doing a lot of stuff outside of just lectures. But what I wanted to ask you is, what do you think that fraternities, themselves can do outside of just, a lecture? I mean, if I come to your fraternity and I do an hour-long lecture, yeah, that's great for, the hour that I'm there. But what are some things that fraternities can do even outside of that to continue the conversation once the lecturer has left?
That's where that key piece of engagement comes into play when we have our volunteers that we have engaged in with our Greek organizations can come into play. Be it a chapter advisor like I am, it could be somebody from the national office who's on their staff, but having volunteers that are educated in this type of topic is going to be what's important to help complement what the university is doing. We also need to make sure that we do call things for what they are. So whenever we have discussions in groups, and whenever groups of students get together, these things are always going to happen. People term locker room talk and things like that. There are lines that you do not cross. And whenever the line is crossed, we need to make sure that people know that they did cross that line. But right. If we're not putting into practice what it is that the lessons are being taught, then like you said, we've just wasted an hour of everyone's time. We right. also want to make sure that the relevance of the topic is important. Whenever we discuss sexual misconduct, we've got to be able to frame it in a way that reflects both that university, but also as a message that the students need to hear. When we give stats that are national in attention, yes, that helps us put things into perspective. But I think it hits home whenever we hear things like, out of the 20,000 U of L students, we've had, a 3% increase in cases, resulting in now we've had 200 investigations into sexual misconduct. That hits home. Same thing with the Indiana University Southeast. It's a small campus. So if I heard more than 5, I would be surprised. But 5 is still 5 too many. Right. So we need to be able to have conversations about that and hit it home for our guys and gals to make sure that they understand that this is a topic and this hits everywhere.
Sure. So, I want to talk to you about, kind of men and our importance in being allies. There's a book that I go back to every now and then whenever I need a little recharge on my batteries, and it's called We Believe You. And really the book is just a book of nothing but survivor stories. And somewhere tucked in the middle, there's a line that I have highlighted, underlined in the caption. I'm like, look at this. This is important. But the line is, if women could stop sexual assault, we would have already done it by now. We need men to step up. We need men to be allies, and we need men to, hold other men accountable if we're ever going to move the needle, on that. And, to me, I think that's a really powerful statement, because that just shows, like, hey, we're an integral part in helping correct this. But then you see so many instances of situations where, like you said, there's one bad actor, but then there's 50 other guys that either turn their head or don't speak up. One of the incidents I can think of off the top of my head, I can't remember what chapter it was, but, there was a chapter that, send out an email, like a rape bait email, like, how to turn your formal date into rape bait. And I'm sitting there reading the story, and I'm like, did nobody say we shouldn't be sending these? So my question for you is, what are some of the obstacles that you see when it comes to, like, undergrads stepping up and being allies in the situation? Like, what are some things that, you think stop people from doing that?
So we've got to make sure all of our undergrads feel comfortable calling out the issue at hand. And I know Greek law and universities have a great program for bystander intervention. I hate the term bystander intervention, because bystander implies somebody from the outside that doesn't do anything. Bystander intervention means we need people who are comfortable enough to step up and step into situations when they view or they have the perception that it's getting inappropriate. Whenever we have people who are educated to look for signs of inappropriateness, like somebody tensing up or somebody getting overly aggressive, it's important that you engage with that individual to make everybody else in the room comfortable. It's a difficult thing to do. That accountability factor is a good life lesson that all collegiates, generally have to learn the hard way. And especially our chapter officers across the Greek organizations, figuring out how to hold peers accountable. For most of them, this is their first opportunity to get to learn that trait. And on a topic as important, which may be the most important topic we have, of sexual misconduct, we have to make sure that our members are empowered with the information and also the ability to step in and resolve the situation then and there before things get bad. Right. So they need to know, and we need to have the foresight to look into those cues and clues that people are putting off, and just be aware of our surroundings.
Sure. I think that's one of the reasons why we kind of focus on freshmen in Greek law. Is the idea is, if we can catch them while they're young and we can continue to work with freshmen, then eventually you're going to get a whole fraternity that has had the same training, the same frame of mind of, stepping up to be allies. So, I don't
want to set that baseline. That's why we invite you every year.
Right. I was going to say, I don't want to turn this into a brag fest on the Omicron Sigma chapter, but, your chapter is one that I have consistently worked with. So now going into the fourth year, we have members now that have been, that have had this training all 4 years. So,
yep.
I'd like to think that, the culture has turned a little bit since we started doing this back in 2016. So definitely some importance on getting with the freshmen. What are some...
Well, and one thing I do want to say, just on your point, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but whenever you have that consistent messaging, like you coming in and talking with TEECs, we put our TEECs out in other student organizations across the campus, like the IFC. And when the IFC then gets allegations or issues that pop up that relate to this topic, now they're more educated to go out and impact more beyond just our organization, but the campus community at large. So it allows them to be leaders across the board. So anybody can use them as a resource. But now we've also equipped those individuals to point people in the right directions for where to go when things seem astray, and who to ask questions to,
right,
and where on campus are the resources available for this. So the more and more we get that consistent messaging with our target audience, the absolute better. And I love the fact that our guys look forward to your visit every year. If they're sitting in your presentation, or they're going to catch you right after. So again, we appreciate everything you get to do for us, and we're proud to be a corporate sponsor for you.
Hey, absolutely. I see a couple guys. I see Dalton in there. Hi, Dalton. And
Chandler.
Chandler, what's going on? How you doing, buddy? Glad to be at IUS, and I'll be seeing a lot more of you guys now. For those who don't know, I'm actually the new Title IX coordinator at IUS. So who would have thought all those years ago when Mark Bobo asked me, hey, do you want to be our chapter advisor, that now I'd wind up working for the university? Kind of Funny how those things work. So,
Mark Bobo.
right. But that actually makes me think of another question, with me kind of moving over and, becoming, an administrator at IUS. And this doesn't have to be specifically about, IUS. This can be across the board. But how do you think the relationship between fraternity members and administration, how do you think it is right now? Like, if you had to gauge it on a temperature, do you think that they're working together well, or do you think it's kind of icy? And if so, what are some things that both sides can do to kind of help that relationship grow?
Yeah, I think it's definitely an icy situation whenever you have student organizations that like to be independent, like Greek organizations,
Mm-hmm.
and the university officials that stay primarily focused in on the education aspect. And again, everybody is in college and in fraternities to get a degree. We're all here for an education purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the barriers that exist are because whenever we have issues that pop up like this, it's always from a judicial standpoint. It's always an allegation's been made. We're going to come in, we're going to suspend services. We're going to have to investigate, and then we'll let you know, or we'll follow up with your national office, and then we'll discuss next steps going forward. So whenever there's allegations, whenever there's pop-ups, or whenever there's struggles going on in the campus organizations, it makes it a lot more difficult to go to the university as that resource, especially the student life office, because there's that fear that they could be shut down. They're automatically going to be assumed that they're guilty. And we want to be able to engage in those conversations in an open manner. So if the university could engage with their organizations, regardless of which university it's going to be, in a more open and in a more friendly format, we really need to restructure the way that we approach sexual misconduct. And that needs to be spearheaded at the university level.
Right. You brought up one thing that, really stuck out about just the way we do things in Greek life. And that is Greeks, whether we're fraternities or sororities, we self-govern ourselves.
Absolutely.
We are unique in the sense, I can't think of too many other student organizations on a college campus that, have their own judicial system set up.
Yep.
They have their own set of rules and standards out, separate than the university standards. And our rules and standards sometimes might even be a little bit more harsh than the university standards. So self-governance is definitely something that you see in Greek life. What are some strides that you have seen Greeks take on their own to address sexual assault, or to try to do events or lectures about sexual assault on campus?
Well, I think when it comes to the standards, and we're specifically talking about the self-governance of Greek organizations, Greeks love to be leaders, and Greeks are leaders across the campuses. So when it comes to those standards, the standards in Greek organizations are higher for the members by design. Now, how they're implemented and how they're enforced are up to each individual chapter. So I hope chapters would not take advantage of that situation. But chapters often get the opportunity to engage with other organizations on their campus by partnering, co-sponsoring, and things like that. And there's always organizations out there that are advocacy organizations. And we shouldn't just look for 1 month to do these types of opportunities. We want to make sure that this is a year-round engagement. We're never going to take it off the back burner because it's no longer April. We want to engage in those conversations and encourage that commingling with the individuals that are most empowered and most knowledgeable on those topics to be engaged with these organizations as we move forward. And that's a great recruitment tool that Greeks can use as well to make sure that we're recruiting the right type of people coming into the chapter. Right. And that makes a lasting impact as well, far beyond 1 year, 2 year. We're talking 4 to 5 years, a difference one person can make just with their legacy on the chapter. But more chapters need to get more engaged with the university by co-sponsoring events, even from things like These Hands Don't Haze to Sexual Assault Prevention Month. Whenever we're in COVID-19 situation, there are still digital ways to stay engaged and to talk about these topics as they are relevant. So it's important that we encourage those types of behaviors as we move forward.
One of the things that I've kind of seen in the past when it comes to getting men engaged as allies is I've seen a lot of defensiveness sometimes.
You've seen what?
Defensiveness.
Okay.
And that defensiveness, it can come from different places. for example, when we were putting Greek law together, we actually were having discussions back in 2015 about what we could do and how we could do it. I remember meeting with the Greek advisor at U of L at the time and kind of telling her what we wanted to do. And she told me this story about the peace office at U of L. They sent one of their, I say maybe one of their more outspoken students to a fraternity. The student, she walks in, and the very first words out of her mouth are, "One out of five of you in this room is a rapist. Let's talk about it." And I'm sitting there thinking, like, no, did she really say that? Because obviously, when you come in and you make a statement like that,
Yeah.
now you're playing defense the whole time because,
Yeah.
Now you've kind of approached it as like, hey, I'm here and I'm against you. So I think that's really why I kind of take a more buddy approach whenever, I work with students. But what would you say to a chapter that does have their defenses up, that is more on the side of, hey, we don't do that stuff here, so it's not a problem for us? What would you say to a chapter that had an attitude like that?
That's where it's important to make sure that we come with those university statistics. It happens on every campus, and it's a very unfortunate thing. Until the number is zero, this is going to continue to be a conversation. And even if we are able to get it to zero, we're still going to keep having the conversation because one is one too many. Mm-hmm. Whenever the defensiveness comes up, and again, we talked about it earlier in regards to the university, the student life office, the 1 in 5 comment, there is this perception that because you're in a Greek organization, you're guilty until you're able to be proven innocent. Right. And that's the exact opposite of what the judicial system is. But it's important to make sure that all of our members understand that these are issues that still hit campuses every single year. Doesn't matter which semester it is, it doesn't matter which month it is. And to be able to have continuing the openness of the conversations, we need to explain why we're having these open conversations.
Right.
We're having them because one is one too many. So what are we doing to combat this? And yes, it's great. If you don't have any sexual misconduct issues with your group, fantastic. Now let's share your successes with the other groups because maybe you're doing something right. And let's share these success stories across the organizations to maybe root out these issues. And when you have a bad actor, you make sure that you have an open conversation, involve the university, and you eliminate that member. I mean, we do not tolerate nor put up with sexual misconduct, and whenever somebody does, it's time to get rid of them.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Thomas, this video, like I said, it'll sit on our Instagram page for, I think, about 24 hours, and then of course we're going to upload this to our YouTube channel, and then continue to share it. So hopefully we can have people looking at this all over. What's one last little statement or word that you could give, any fraternity men that might be watching this right now and, might kind of be going back and forth on, stepping up to the front line and being an ally?
Absolutely. So the parting message I would have is, as a collegiate, it's important to have fun. Nobody likes to sit down and have a conversation about sexual misconduct. And we generally are going to have more than one throughout the year, especially in Greek organizations. So it's going to be part of the risk management through a national office. It's going to be part of the university programming too, because they're going to want to do it their way. At the end of the day, you need to have fun, and it's important that you understand and fully comprehend what consent is and get yourself in a position to be comfortable to have a conversation about consent. And you need to be comfortable addressing that bystander intervention. So whenever you see things going awry, you need to be a man, you need to be a leader, you need to be a woman, whatever it may be, step up to the plate and address the situation for what it is. And as long as you're having a good time, as long as you're cognizant of your surroundings, everything's going to work out in the end, and you're going to have a meaningful collegiate experience.
Sure thing. Well, Thomas, I want to say thank you for joining in with us this evening. Very insightful words, and like I said, I think you're a great role model for undergrads across the board. If anyone that's watching, wants to get a hold of Thomas for anything, send us a DM to our Greek Law page, and we will get you in touch with Thomas for anything. And perfect time to send the plug. Corona's not going to last forever, so we'll be back on campus one day. So if your chapter would like to have Greek Law come out, and speak, we're more than happy to come out and do consent presentations for your new members. I see Georgia Connolly logged in from the Connolly Law Offices in Louisville. She's also our chief legal officer here at Greek Law, so keeps my butt out of trouble. Georgia will be on Teal Tint next week. She is an alum of AL Pi sorority at U of L. So Georgia will be on Teal Tint next week. She'll be telling you guys a little bit about her story as an undergrad, and then we'll really be focusing on what resources are out there for survivors, resources on a college campus, and also resources out in the legal world as well. So we'll be back here on Instagram next Thursday at 7 o'clock. Until then, everyone be safe, stay 6 feet apart, wash your hands, do all the stuff that we ought to be doing anyway, but now we're super cognizant to do. So until then, we'll see you guys later. Thomas, you have a good evening, buddy.
You too. Thanks for hosting, Joey. Have a good night.
Thank you.